Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today I'm going to do a internal review on this JG G3-K3 or T3-K3. Hi guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do like and subscribe because it really helps me out. Especially the like button, because that helps me get seen better by the YouTube algorithm. In terms of safety, make sure you got eye pro on, your batteries are out, your mags are out and things when you're doing this sort of thing, just in case, like I do. So hopefully you've seen the recent unboxing of this. Today we're going to get on with a little bit of a disassembly and see what kind of internals it's got in here. So we've got metal outer barrel, and we have got a 14mm negative under there, which gives us access to even a rubber sort of stabilizer under there for the barrel, and allows us to fit whatever we want on this. If you want a suppressor, a tracer, whatever, easy days to get that on there. In terms of the front handguard, just a front push out pin like you'll get on an MP5, and that should just drop out and away, and that gives us access to sort of the outer barrel system, which comes away. A couple of screws here, and this assembly will just slide forward. Now we're not going to look into that too much just because we don't need to. It's more about the internals of everything else going off. You will notice it's very similar to an MP5. They are built sort of almost identical to an MP5 internally. They're very similar in terms of builds. So that's the front handguard. The stock then, we'll pop the cap off. There we go. The wiring is there. What we're going to do to get the stock off is it's two pins that need a flathead. Put that over there. So get those out of the way. If you are wondering about the paint is on my arms. It's because I've been decorating. The day that I filmed this, this is the 6th video in a row that I filmed this evening. So I filmed 3 unboxings and 3 disassemblies as well as all the shooting and chronoing and stuff for them as well. So it's been a busy day. So I've taken those 2 out. So this stock now should just come off. There we go. It disconnects quite easily. Now the wiring, as you probably saw then, just popped itself apart. So it is just little spade connectors. Sometimes it is a mini Tamiya in there that connects to the back of the gearbox. On this occasion, it looks like they've switched to using little spade connectors, which we can reconnect. So that wiring will generally loosely just move backwards and forwards through the stock, so we can reconnect that. This end cap here is metal and is attached through a screw there that keeps it, and a screw at the bottom that keeps the actual stock on there. So we'll leave that to one side. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little plate out that's just shaped like that, and it just sits in there. It just helps to stabilise the back end a little bit. Get rid of that. Need a Phillips head. We've got a screw in here to remove. And that will release that assembly there. That helps to locate the gearbox properly. We've got a screw here, bolt here, and then I think at this point, it's been a while since I've done a G3 disassembly. Catch. This screw is different in size and shape to the other ones that we've removed so far, so make sure you keep it separate. Now I seem to remember, might need the mag cap out, but nope, there we go. So at this point now we can just slide our gearbox all the way out the back. Now if this was front wired, the wiring would have come out the back of the gearbox and loop back round and run down basically one of these little tracks down here back into the front. What we can do as well is I've just pushed on the hop unit, and the hop and barrel is just going to slide all the way out. Look how long that thing is. It's enormous. So that's the hop and barrel, fairly standard looking. We were getting well over 50 meters out of this bad boy when we were shooting it the other day. Now, that is a hop fully turned on now. It was hopping 2 5s with absolutely no issues whatsoever. So I would assume 2 8s maybe to push. I wouldn't have thought anything heavier. There doesn't look to be enough adjustment in there. Barrel is a little bit mucky, but it looks like I can't see any sort of evidence of any sort of poor milling or whatever. It looks generally quite good quality. Now in terms of the rest of the receiver, that's as far as I want to go. The rest of it is sort of just obviously cosmetics and things, and I don't really see much point in going further into it. If you do want to see further into this, please let me know in the comments below, because what I will do is when I do the other G3 that I have in a future video, I will disassemble more of this stuff if people want to see more of it. If you're not bothered, that's absolutely fine. So next thing I'm going to remove the pistol grip. So very much sort of similar to an M4 or an MP5. These screws are quite stiff. Come on. There we go, that's one screw. And as we start on doing this one, we should see, yeah, the base plate is coming off. Now the base plate is sort of shaped in a specific way. There we go, those screws to one side. So as you can see, there's like little sort of angles. It will generally only go in one way, and if I flip it over, look, you can see there's like more depth here, and made in China reads that way. So that's the little base adjustment plate, just pinging about. There we go. Make sure not to lose that, because that helps you adjust your motor. Put that out of the way. So I've got our wiring. See, they've got a lovely thick wiring in the stock, or what looks like lovely thick wiring, and then it jumps to this really thin wiring. Not that I'm saying there's anything necessarily wrong with it, but you might as well sort of unify and go with one or the other. So I'm just trying to get that out. That's not easily coming out. I'm just going to grab that. There we go. So it's just caught a little bit. So just pulled that out. There's our generic Jing Gong long shaft motor, and we've got 2 Phillips heads down there. That's 1, that's 2. I'm going to try and leave them in the pistol grip just so that I don't have to fiddle about with them later trying to get them back in. That should, yeah, that was very, very stiff onto the gearbox there. It's like wedged on, which is obviously good for stability. Put that in there. That stands up nicely. Now, I believe I've got to remove this from this side, which requires a tiny Phillips head. So we've got a little Phillips head. So the selector actually goes through the body. Now, be careful you don't lose this, because you will be a little bit scuppered if you do. The selector, then I've undone the little screw. I think that plate, yeah, it's dropped out, look. Now that's got a little sort of D shape in there that links with the D shape. Hopefully you can see that that is shaped there. See if I can show you the pair. My camera's unusually high, because as high as it can go because of the size of the G3. So they are shaped to match together so that you get the right orientation. But the screw is the tiniest little screw I've ever seen, and I think that's it. Now this here is like a little cam that will just pop out. So what I find helpful is if you just keep it that way up, and there you can see the cam is right there. That is what just moves your selector for you. And it just sits against that and just moves that about. So I'm going to keep that safe for now and remember to put that back in. Now the JG gearbox, matte black, it's looking solid. I always thought they were quite beefy, and they at least look better than a SEMA gearbox. So it's what looks like a Torx 10 screw. So find a T10 and get those removed. It's always a good idea to keep your screws in the order that you took them out, just in case there is any differences that are not easily and immediately noticeable. So that's all the screws out. I'm going to put the screwdriver in the back as we do, and I'm going to tip that up as I split it to stop that from firing out. So put that in. There we go. There we go. So take the spring out now. The spring, it's not the strongest I've felt in a gearbox. It's possibly M110, M120, that sort of strength. Now internally we've got a delayer for the that's an MP5, and I don't know if you can see, but the nozzle actually says MP5 on it. It's got a black nozzle and a black tappet plate. It does actually look quite nice quality, does that. The cylinder and the piston look like the old school white plastic that I'm used to seeing of JG. The gear set, you know, not really that discernible from a SEMA gear set. You've still got what is effectively a M4 style, AR style trigger block. It's a version 2 gearbox at the end of the day. Anti-reversal latch. We'll lift the trigger assembly out, the cylinder assembly out. There went the spring. So I'll take those off a second, see what the compression's like. Ooh, that's, wow, okay. That's some good compression in there. I am impressed with that. JG, well done, you've got some good compression. I'm throwing all sorts of bits all over. Now, that says MP5 on it as well. I don't know if these are brand new or if these have been fitted because it's a repair or something. There's even, I mean, I can move the piston in, but that's good air seal with that air nozzle. So I'm quite impressed with that. So I dare say that is a little bit weaker spring than I sort of thought it might be, which is a good sign. There is some effort in there of shimming as well, which is good to see. Now I can't see any, I've put probably about nearly 300 rounds to it, and I can't see any sign of wear on anything that says that anything's rubbing, which would mean that the shimming is at least in part doing its job to keep the gears from rubbing on each other. It all looks fairly well built, fairly solid. I am quite happy with that. Metal bushings in there. Not entirely sure what's going on with the O-ring there, unless possibly might be that one of the body pins goes through that. Might not even be far enough back. No, not sure what the orange O-ring is for there, but that's obviously where an M4 style or AR style body pin would go through. But we'll close this up now. I am quite happy with that. Find that spring out. So I'm just going to hook that spring on there. And I'm just going to hook that little spring onto this post here and then stretch it back. I'll do it on the countertop so I'm not losing anything. I'm trying to... Make sure that my wire goes back. Had this sort of issue before. There we go. So all I've done there is just made sure that that spring's hooked onto here. That springs back nicely now. Made sure that the cylinder head lugs fit onto the lugs in there to centralise it, and the pistons on its runners. And now I can put the other gear in, and then we can finish reassembling. So anti-reversal latch, put its spring back on. And that should spring that way into the gearbox that way. Now all I've done is, it's not entirely needed, but I've spun the gears around so that the sector gear is closer to engaging with the tappet plate. It's not needed for any particular reason, it just makes me feel better. I'm a little bit OCD. Now this is going to be one of those anti-reversal latches that gives me no ends of issues because it keeps pinging out of place already. So hopefully we can get this together quickly. So I'm going to put the spring in, the spring guide. The black wire's already moved. And there goes the thing already. It's reversal. Yep. Somewhat of a hassle there. I'm just finishing it up, getting it back together, and I'm hoping that's not jumped too far out of its place. The black wire goes back in his place. Come on, little thing, go back. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to use a screwdriver just to manipulate it back to where I want it to go, because it's not playing nice with me at the minute. And it's so close, you can see. I might have to just go it again. Let's try that again. It looks to be the exact same thing once again. Yes, it does. Oh, nice. So finally, after loads of attempts, I'm not going to reopen it again, but I've got it back together. So what, in amongst all the issues, the trigger kept popping out, the anti-reversal latch kept popping out, the black cable kept popping out. So in the end, I managed to sort of just bend the black cable a little bit just to keep it positioned properly, so it wasn't wobbling about as much. The trigger I couldn't do much about, but the anti-reversal latch, what I did do with the anti-reversal latch is I basically braced the spring and just bent it ever so slightly, so that the part that pushes against the side of the gearbox was bent slightly up. Ultimately, it was a pain in the backside, but that actually worked though, and it meant that the anti-reversal latch wasn't jumping out every few seconds. So now I'm going to very quickly screw this all together before I lose it completely. Now, it's probably a good job that I've stopped the camera, actually stopped recording at one point, and I edited little bits out, or at least sped through me trying to put it together, because if the full video was there, you would hear some choice words. It was not a happy occasion for Pheas. Still love G3 though. So just getting all these screws in, and then we're just going to rebuild it, and then we're done. So internally, The anti-reversal latch is a pain in the backside. The black wire is a pain in the backside. The trigger is a pain in the backside. To be fair, part of the trigger issue is that they've actually put, God knows why, they've actually put some of the grease on the top of the trigger where it touches the trigger block, the electric trigger block. So it's obviously effectively greasing it up. So there's no friction to hold it in place, basically, which seems, in one way, okay, I can understand it, make sure that it moves freely, but in another way, I just think you've just made reassembly so difficult for anybody. So that's in. But we've done it now and I feel better for it. In case you're wondering, it's actually 11:30 at night in the UK while I'm filming this, and this is the 6th video I filmed this evening, as well as all the footage of it shooting and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit frazzled right now. Oops. As I said before, I am naturally very clumsy, but it doesn't help when I'm trying to do this up in the air on camera for you guys to see what I'm doing to do this. So there we go. That's reassembled. I'm just going to throw it away. No, I'm not really. So we're going to drop those back in there. And what I'm going to do is, before this goes in, I need to remember that this little cam needs to go in. Now it should only go one way, which is that way in. So I'm just going to flip that over. Now what will happen is, there we go, it should sit flush against the side of the gearbox. As I push this in, what will happen is that cam will connect into and force the selector where it needs to be, because it's in the right shape for it, sort of thing. So what I can do now is I can actually put the selector through. So the selector itself at the base of this brass pole has got like 2 little notches that make it like a rectangle, and that meets up with the rectangle. Let's just check that, yeah. This bit here is the clicker ball, this little notch here that sits in this rung here. I'm just going to push that through. There we go. So we're in the safe position at the moment. So if I pull the trigger, it is blocked. I'm then going to drop this off now. This obviously will match up. It will only drop on. Do not force it onto the pole. It should just, there we go. It just dropped nicely onto where it should go. Now, not to lose this little screw. It is like one of the tiny screws I've ever seen. Tiny Phillips head. I remember once, years ago, one of my friends had a G3 and he lost this little screw. It just worked its way loose over time and dropped out. And I think we waited about 3 months for fire support to get them back in stock. The Tokyo Maru ones, it's the only ones we could find. And it took ages to wait for it to come. So it was unusable to an extent because his selector just kept coming out all the time. So we had to wait until that came back in stock, because he actually lost the full selector and the little bit. So we had to wait for the full assembly to come back in. It took ages. There we go. So run those back down. Now the pistol grip links onto those little bits there, and it's a tight fit. Then we've got a couple of screws down in there. There we go. Not. There we go. That's better. That one's tightened in. So I'm just tightening down the Phillips heads. There we go. Making sure I get that click first by going backwards until get that click and then go forwards. The motor can drop in there, so the red is at the front, the black is at the back. They don't need to, sort of be manoeuvred under the motor anywhere. They just come up, straight up the pistol grip where they come in, go straight onto their terminals. There we go, got those out of the way. Next, we've got the base plate. So obviously we've got the shape bit, goes to the back like that. But make sure that you put your motor adjustment plate in. There we go, hold that down while I put these screws back in. So that's one tightened down, so I can let go now, get the other one in there. One of the things I do, well, one of the things I like about G3s is how quickly I can get the gearbox out and that there's not too much faffing about. You know, you look at some sort of guns to get into the gearbox, it's a nightmare. I'm not mentioning any particular guns, M14, but certain guns are a pain. So our selector's back working, so I know that it's working because I can see it there as well. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop this back plate. In fact, actually, we're going to wait till it's in the back of the gun first. So just checking round, that's everything so far. So all I'm going to do is the barrel and the hop's back in there and it's pushed up as far as it'll go. And I'm just going to slide that in there. Might need to come a little bit lower. There we go, seated properly, and that just slides in like that. So what I'm going to do at this stage now is I'm just going to put this front body pin in. Now the body pin will only go in one way properly. You've got these little teeth around the bottom here, and these match up with these gaps here. So I'm just going to drop it in, and it should go almost flush like that. The other side just screws in. Tighten that down. There we go. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the wiring up from the stock before I do anything else. Ooh. There goes the wiring from the stock. So I'll just feed that back through. There's an awful lot of room in there, and I'm going to pull that quite far out like that, and then the connectors will just slide back together again. So what you're looking for is that the exposed one goes into the not exposed, so into that one there. Not gonna lie, you know what? Let's make this easy on ourselves. Let's just do it like this. Well, actually, do you know what? It's actually going to be easier is if I just take this back off again. I'll be honest, JG, if you're watching, Jing Gong, the Mini Tamiya was definitely a better option, or replace it with Dean's. In fact, is that going to help me at all? Yes, it is. So take that pin out, slide that back off. Does help me because I've got a little bit more access to these now. So I'm going to do this one, we'll go into this one. I've pushed those in as far as they'll go. At this stage, if you want, you can put a battery on and test fire it, make sure that the wiring up is right. I'm just going to straighten that out for when I put it back through the stock. But I'm going to put it back in now, like this. Position that again. There we go. Slide that in, click and done. Drop that body pin back in. Get it back flush. Screw that down. There we go. Another job done. Right, at this stage now then, we need to bring this little plate and this little plate back in. So I'm just going to drop that in first, and that just screws into the back of the gearbox. Listen for the click. Tighten down, it doesn't tighten very far, it doesn't need to. And then I'm going to drop that in there, that in there, it just keeps it spaced out. And then the wiring can be fed back down the stock. What I am going to do is I'm just going to straighten it off a tad, and I'm going to feed it in that way so I can look the opposite way in the stock and see where it's going. Just do it that way, and then it's facing the right way to come down through that slot. There we go. Sorry, it was stuck a little bit on like a ridge at the bottom there. So I'm just manipulating it about a little bit just to get it to go in. There it is. And all I'm going to use there is my little needle nose to get hold. Bring it up, oops. There we go. Now that could have been made so much easier if that had just still been a mini Tamiya in the back of there like it used to be. So the stock is just going to slide back on, just going to pull that back out. There we go. Sorted. The two stock screws can go back in. Make sure you hold them in with your fingers when you flip them over. Otherwise they will just literally fall straight back out. I'm going to finger tighten that first, then the other one, and then I'm going to tighten that down. A stock plate can go back on now. Our muzzle brake can go back on. Go, and there we have it. After quite a while, the JG098 T3-K3, all the threes, has done and dusted and finished. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've I was going to say enjoyed me getting angry, but I didn't show you me particularly getting angry with it, but never mind. So I hope that's been useful to you. Please do like and subscribe. Make sure you visit my gaming channel and drop in by my Discord as well and say hello. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.